Okay, this is sort of a lot of information here. We're going to talk about preterito con verbos irregulares and preterito, the past completed, which, you know, there's like 8 or 9, depending on how you look at it, ways are irregular verbs in the preterito in Spanish. There's a lot. Anyways, these I like to think of as J, I, and U stem verbs because they have out of pretty much nowhere a J, an I, or a U that is put into their stem. And they have an irregular stem. In other words, it's not just without the infinitive end. So let's look at these. Start with the J. And the reason why we're going to start with the J is because we'll go off that endings wise too. So to get your preterito stem, by the way, traer. If you looked at before, we had I to Y. There's a video on I to Y, brick house, or cellar verbs we call them. But traer is, although it is an ER, IR ending verb that has a stem that ends in a vowel, it is not an I to Y. It's actually a J stemmer. So this guy, you sort of have to be careful if you're thinking like rules wise. J stemmer, traer, to bring, okay, or to carry. Tra is your stem for that. There's a J, it comes out of nowhere. Decir, to say. Dich, okay. And then I'm going to put, if you see, there are some things in parentheses here. There's a couple of them, and those are English elements to the word that we're going to sort of use to mark common verbs with this in English. Producir is to produce. You hear the us in English, right? Really, any verb will, that has the us, it's very common for them to end in usir in Spanish. And none of those are going to be produ verbs. Por ejemplo, to reproduce, okay? Reduce, produce. Conducir, which is to drive or to make something conducive in English. All those all have UCEs in them in the English word, and they're pretty much cognates, that is, sounding like the same word, Spanish to English. Those are all going to have a J stem. Anyways, these endings, so you take your stem and you add your endings. No hay acentos or no accents, okay? That's important to note because in the preterito there's usually some accents in the regular endings, okay? E, iste, o, imos, istes, eran. Careful of this. We're going to talk about that in a second. Eran. That's why we're doing the J's first. So, ¿qué dijeron ustedes? What did you guys say? What did you say? Would be how you would say that. Okay? I stemmers. Same idea. Only these have an I in them. Querer, to want. Quis. Venir, to come, to arrive. Vin. Hacer is to do or to make. Is. Now, just be careful because if you add, and I'll go forward a little bit, if you add your O ending to is, it becomes ico. That's no good. We don't want a hard C all of a sudden come up. So this one right here, you're going to have to change the C to zeta, to Z, and it'll be E, so you get back that C sound, the S-like C sound. Anyways, these endings are almost exactly the same. E, iste, o, imos, istes, eran. Okay? And then these endings are also going to go to this side too. If you want to just look at the endings too, you see these endings, it's really a mix between AR preterito endings, ER-IR preterito endings, so just, you sort of have to use these, remember them. Just note that the endings are the way they are. U stemmers, and there's really only 3 that change like this, 3 different kinds, J, I, and U. There's a lot of these because of these root words. U stem. Estar, estuve. Andar, estar is to be, right? The ser estar issue is another thing altogether. Andar, to walk pretty much. Anduve. Poder, to be able. Pud. Okay, which may mean a little something different in the preterito. Might mean that you were not successful, you failed, depending on how it's used. Poner, to put it in place. Pus. Now, there's a lot of verbs in Spanish that use poner. In English, these verbs all have pose in them. Like, for instance, suponer, to suppose. Componer, to compose. A couple other on my list here. Yeah, but I mean, anything with the O-S-E type of thing, it's going to be a poner verb pretty much cognate-wise, if you can just keep that in mind. Poner is pose usually, all right? So you think to put it into place is to pose something a certain way anyways. Saber, to know, how to know a fact or how to do something. Soup, okay? In the preterito, it's going to be to find something out because you didn't know and then you do. But soup is your stem. Tener, to have, okay? Now tener means to have by itself, but it is the root word to, if we add some prefixes to like detener, it's to detain. Retener, to retain. Sostener, to sustain. And there are even more if you want to go through them. So, but these tain words in English usually have tener in them, and there's quite a few if you were to look at that. Your stem for those is tuv. So if you had detener, por ejemplo, it would be detuv. Okay, retener, to retain, retuv. Caber is to fit into something. All right, either yourself, puzzle piece, to physically fit into something, and that's going to be coop. All right, and your endings are the same as I and you. Same endings. And these are very similar except for this one difference, is that you add an I. So you have J-I-U stem verbs in el preterito, and these are verbos irregulares for sure, because they're definitely not the same, the regular stem, and the endings are different too.